Bonjour Tobias, peux-tu nous parler de l'exposition qui a lieu présentement ici à la SAT?
This is espace-sono audio listening lab. It is a headphone listening environment consisting of approximately 36 artists from about 20 different countries, presenting their work in sound or sonic arts, audio art. In order to present these works, I've created a differentiated, body-friendly environment. There's a black cube, beds, these sort of capsule-style couches, and a tent. And each station designs is sort of a design to bring your body into a different state and a different place in order to hear the works.
Est-ce que tu peux te présenter comme conservateur de l'exposition, donc Tobias C. Veen, the curator?
Well, this sound art exhibition came about through some work I was doing with the Upgrade International in fall of 2006, although the genesis came for a new sound art exhibition in 2005. At that point, I was working with artists in the Upgrade International Technology Arts Network and bringing some sound artists together for an exhibition in Oklahoma City for the second Upgrade International held in November of 2006. This was the first manifestation of the audio lab on a smaller scale. This exhibit was quite successful, but I thought the concept of creating a listening environment could be pushed much farther. So at this point, I approached SAT and pitched a proposal to SAT in fall of 2006 to do something in their new gallery space that would allow us to facilitate and create a larger, more engaging listening environment, and to move from CD-based players, preferably to some sort of more complex delivery system with more visual information telling you about the artists. At the same time, we eventually had DVD consoles for this purpose. SAT responded in June of 2007. SAT responded in June of 2007 saying that they wanted the exhibition for their fall opening. So we very quickly assembled the exhibition on a honestly shoestring budget, which I think was quite an accomplishment for everybody at SAT, and specifically Louis-Philippe Saint-Arnaud did an amazing job realizing the production. The conceptual side of the exhibition is really to re-engage the body with sound and to very slyly inject some ideas from the electronic underground. I've been making or producing events in technoculture for about 15 years. And the more successful events always create an entire environment for you to enter into to experience experimental music or electronic music. So there's subtle hints here of ambient rooms and rave chill-out rooms in this exhibit, but it's taken to a slightly distanced level. It's taken to the level of the gallery where objects are presented as sort of obtuse and abstruse environments. They're not as comfortable as you'd expect them to be. But at the same time, it's inviting. The idea is to bring you in, to lie on the bed, to go into the cube and go into the tent. And once people realize this, they really start to understand the exhibition, if not conceptually, then bodily. They start to move into it and experience it. And only then, I think, does the sound art begin to have its desired effect of actually penetrating the ears and removing you from an emphasis upon the visual aspects.
Tobias, comment définis-tu l'art sonore? Et aussi, peux-tu nous dire quelques mots sur comment as-tu procédé pour choisir les artistes ici dans l'exposition?
Sound is a question, and so the curatorial essay that I wrote for this exhibition poses a question. It says, how do you exhibit the unseen? Whenever you exhibit the unseen or the sonic, which is not quite the invisible, it is visible, it is tangent, it is something of feeling and affect, but it is nonetheless unseen. Whenever you exhibit this sound, does it not become registered either under the sign of the visual arts, it becomes an exposition, an exhibition, to exhibit something, or it becomes registered under the sign of music. People expect music, people expect gratification from music, they expect almost music as a consumable object, or they expect experimental music simply presented as such. Sound art is neither. Sound art is I almost want to cross out the is and define it negatively. Sound art is not music. Sound art is the taking of music perhaps as an object, but it never becomes music itself. Now, other people would flip this around and say, well, music really only questions itself and defines itself when it is on the boundary of its own meaning, and that is when you encounter music, is when it approaches the sonic arts or the art of sound. That is true, but what I'm trying to gesture at is a broader moment within the history of the arts, specifically within the past 100 years, where certain technologies, replication and reproduction and sampling technologies, have allowed us to view music or sound beyond music as an object unto itself. This would be concurrent with moments in the visual arts, in painting and so forth, when it no longer became an art of representation, but taking of the moment of the canvas and the paint. So that would be the moment of modernism, for example, abstract expressionism. We're much past this. We're significantly 70 or 80 years past this. But the moment to try and mark out sound art as distinct from music remains an open question. It remains a negative question. We can only think it right now in the sense of sound art is not music. So this would be the first sort of opening question. And when I'm thinking about the pieces and the artists that I want to work with, I'm thinking about how their work is on the borderlines of either using music as an object or steadfastly refusing to fall into musical conventions or the idea of music as accepted throughout numerous cultures in the world, which is not to say one will not find harmony, melody, counterpoint, all these sort of formal aspects that still dominate some of these works, or even electroacoustic or acousmatic compositional techniques from the academy and so forth, or microsound or experimental underground techniques, mashup, turntablism. This all plays a part. But each of these tracks, these sound objects, can be presented by themselves purely for a listening experience. They don't need to be performed. They don't need to be represented in a performance, and they don't need to be represented by a score. So in this sense, even through the very environment of their presentation in this listening environment, I'm trying to push them towards the boundaries of becoming not music. So some of these artists were artists that I was familiar with through 15 years of curating and as an artist myself, as a turntablist. Some of these artists come from the Upgrade International Network. These are all artists from all kinds of different countries, but also different levels of their practice. Phil Niblock, who's an established sort of downtown New York scene artist, is in the Exposition. He's somebody who worked with Fluxus in like the 60s. He's been around for a while. To newer artists from Montreal and Canada and like so forth. So it's really trying to blend many of these diverse elements. There are many challenges to listening with this exhibition. Some of the response that I've had, for example, from a number of student bloggers has been fascinating because it already investigates or shows us how many people view music as a consumable object. Many people are quite frustrated that you cannot fast forward through the tracks. You cannot skip ahead. You can change tracks, but you can't skip to what one blogger wrote as the good bit. He couldn't find the good bit, and he just wanted to skip ahead and find that and stay there. This is fascinating for me because it shows how people expect media to be remixable, but it's also disappointing because it shows how people have less patience and have fallen into this expectation of being granted media as a object of immediate gratification, of immediate desires. When one goes into a film in the theater, one does not demand that the projectionist fast forward the film to the good bit. Assuming that your idea of the good bit is the aesthetic moment that everybody else is going to think is the good bit. The same thing with video art presentation. In a gallery, it's usually not expected that you can fast forward a piece of video art. I find it fascinating then that so many people understand sound, especially when presented on a DVD console, with a little bit of visual information telling you what's playing, that people expect it to be like an iPod, to be able to shuffle a random or play with. So it's a challenge for a lot of people to simply sit and listen.
Certaines pièces sonores proposées dans l'exposition proviennent de hits connus. On a cité Pat Benatar un peu plus tôt. En quoi la restructuration et la revisitation de pièces connues deviennent tout d'un coup une œuvre d'art?
Yes, why Pat Benatar? Why the remix? Why is a remix art? There are many examples of remix in this exhibition. Not only the artist that you're alluding to, which is Fishhead from Montreal, originally from Winnipeg, who's a turntablist. I'll tell you a little bit about Fishhead's art and explain to you exactly why what he's doing might be considered a sound art object. Fishhead is working with turntables. He is producing a live mashup. He's taking 2 records from his archive, from a massive archive of vinyl. He's taking one slightly more recognizable record such as Pat Benatar or NWA or Public Enemy. And he's taking one relatively more underground record, usually out of a drillcore, drum and bass, or breakcore or hardcore scene. And he's managed to identify records that fit so seamlessly together that when layered end to end, their composition seems to mirror each other almost perfectly, as if they were destined to be layered with each other. There's a certain skill in choosing which musical moments to lay on top of other musical moments. I think John Cage demonstrated this for us many years ago. But there's also a certain skill in doing this manually, in mastering the art of reappropriating the Technics 1200 turntable and creating such a perfect beat match. Again, we're not talking about software. This is not done digitally. This is the ancient 1990s art of turntablism. So this is such a perfect mashup, such a perfect layering. And he does it without any noticeable impairment to the layering of the tracks. It is a perfect mix. At the same time, there are uncanny moments within these mashups. There are things occurring which are affective, emotionally affective, and not just because of Pat Benatar or whoever might be singing or whoever else is involved, but because of the way the 2 tracks interact. They bring out elements in each other which were only there before in their absence.
Quelle expérience tu voulais faire vivre aux spectateurs avec cette exposition et quelle a été ta propre expérience avec cette exposition?
Well, the ideal experience would be to wander in here with very little expectations of what constitutes sound art and to come out with a very eclectic experience of sound in all of its manifestations. There's no proper or ideal experience of these works. There are only experiences to be had, and they can only be had by investigating and exploring each one of the consoles. It's probably unlikely that anybody will have time to listen to every single piece. You would have to have had spent almost the entire duration of the exhibition to experience all of the works. It is an impossibility, and this is part of the experience here. But the ideal experience is stepping into the exhibition and leaving yourself here for a couple of hours, and then coming out back into the world instead of having a dreamlike experience of what you just walked into.